back. This is what we're going to call ketchup. And ketchup in the kitchen is not a condiment, it's a staple. And ketchup in the long arm room, just like it is in life, is a staple. I was going to do this yesterday, but my printers, my computer, and my Wi-Fi didn't want to talk to each other for about three and a half hours. After booting and rebooting and downloading print drivers, etc., 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 we finally got the UPS label that we were trying to printed out 3 times on one computer because there was stuff in the queue, 6 times on another computer because there was stuff in the queue, and we forgot to clear the queue when it finally started working. So anyway, here it is, ketchup. Never know what day ketchup's going to be. Someday it's Sunday ketchup, someday it's Thursday ketchup, like today. So I thought I would go over a few of the things that I haven't really touched on as yet. And one of those is the bobbin winder and my bobbins. If it hasn't been noticed, that's fine, it's no big deal, but I use steel bobbins for several reasons. One of them is, if you've ever dropped a bobbin underneath the long arm and had to crawl down there to get it, you'll appreciate steel bobbins because they have magnetic capabilities. So that is one of the reasons. The other reason is that I don't handle the bobbin. I don't put any tension on the thread in the bobbin after it's wound. I don't pull it off when it's wound by grasping, putting pressure on that thread, and then pulling the bobbin off. I believe, and based on doing it in the beginning, when I took them off like that, I would get an inaccurate reading on the toa gauge. When I put it in the bobbin case, put it in the toa gauge, another quirk, I don't allow my left hand to influence the toa gauge, and I'm looking for 200. Right now I'm pulling it just a shy under. There, now it's on 200. It would probably, I think it's okay if the red needle is a little before the 200 or a little after the 200. That's not that much of a variance. And I always run a test patch on my quilts so that on the side of the quilt, off the quilt, not on the quilt, so that I get a good look at my tension, so that I know what my tension looks like on both sides. I even go as far as to check the top with a magnifying glass, and then I go up underneath and check the bottom with a magnifying mirror so that I can see the stitches. So that's the reason for the steel bobbins, is that I don't like handling this. I don't like putting any pressure on the threads and taking them off the machine, and they are magnetic. And I can't tell you how many times I've taken the bobbin case out of the hook assembly and the bobbin is still in the bobbin case. So I have a magnet right on the front of my machine. I use it to pull it out. Another thing that I do is, and there is a service bulletin out in regards to using clamps on your rails. So make sure if you do use clamps, because those little things that I took them out. They didn't. As soon as I put any pressure on the machine, they would start sliding, no matter how tight I could get them down. When I put this on, you got to slam that machine back, or for whatever way you're trying to block, to get these to move. So I've been using these since probably, I'd say about the second week of long arming. I went out to the garage again and brought those in. I've got 2 in case I have to block it in both directions. I don't think I've ever had to do that. I will lock it in a position. I've done some comforters where they just wanted a straight line to go down. About 3 layers of batting one polyester and 2 cotton, and then they just want a straight line. So I will lock it in. I'll put it in sideways, lock it in, and then put the straight lines in. In regards to the bobbin winder, if you look real close, it is not threaded the way the diagram shows. And I don't have any excuse except maybe next time read the instructions. When I got the bobbin winder, I threaded it, and when I came to the pretension discs, I just looped it under. And then up here I come run it through. And in the case of my discs, I just assumed the tension was set. And so I just ran it over, looped it over, and dropped it down and started winding bobbins. About 3 years later, I found out that this is supposed to cross, and that this is supposed to be inside the discs with a little tension. Well, for 3 years it worked. So I'm still doing it that way, and now I'm in my 12th year. The thread is visible. The discs are relatively closed together, and there's enough friction of that thread passing over those discs that when I wind my bobbins, it's one of the things that's almost consistent is I'm going to come up with around 200. I'm going to be just a little before or a little after. If I have a tension issue, if I got 200 or right close at it here, and I have a tension issue over here, 90% of the time it's only a half a turn, either tightening it up or loosening it up, because I've got a little peekaboo on the top or a little peekaboo on the bottom. I have very few tension issues at all. I always have to double check it when I do t-shirts and when I do flannels and when I do minky and all that stuff, because it does make a little bit of a difference. But it's not a significant difference. I don't think I've turned out a full turn, I'd say, within the last 5 or 6 years. Every now and then, but not very often. So that is some of it. And now I'll get around to the other side of the machine and I'll talk about some of the things that I've got going on over there. In regards to yesterday, it reminded me of the 3 people, or 3 entities that helped me get through situations like that. One was my grandfather. He said, you need to identify the problem, and then you need to continue to search for the solution, and when you find the solution that works, then you want to complete the task. I was probably 12, 11, I don't know. I was young. When I was 17, I learned about improvise, adapt, and overcome. That's the Marine Corps' version of that. And when I was home on leave, I was 19 years old, and I was at my father's auto mechanic shop, and I was taking out a transmission, and I was having a terrible time with a bolt. And he asked me, he said, are you ever going to get done under there? And I said, well, I'm having problems with this bolt. And he said, well, you have to be smarter than the bolt. So yesterday, we had to be smarter than T-Mobile and Microsoft and I forget who made the computer, Acer, I think. So because we were having problems on 3 computers and 4 printers. Just could not get anything to work. And finally, after maneuvering and everything, and Elaine says it has to be T-Mobile's fault because all of that stuff couldn't go out at once. And so there's a possibility that T-Mobile was having some problems and we didn't know about it. So I'll get this camera changed around and get it moved over, and I'll show you some improvise, adapt, and overcome. Where is my remote? So this is how far I got yesterday on the quilt, and that is I got to roll it. I've got 2 rows done and I got to roll it. That's just the way it turned out. I thought I'd go over a couple of things that I missed when I talked about some of the tools that I use, like the red snappers and the ready edge. I forgot to mention my go-to ready edge, which is not really a ready edge. It was $6.98, and it came with a pair of shorts. And it works tremendously. I just cut the hook off. And I can just put it just puts just enough tension on the area that I'm doing to pull any waviness or anything out of the bottom of the quilt. I use them on both sides when I think it's necessary. It's not necessary on this quilt, but I put them on there because I needed to film this for Ketchup. The other thing is that when these magnets aren't on the quilt, I'll walk down here and show you. They're hanging on hooks that are attached to the side of the machine, and that's where they are unless they're being used. And when they're not on the quilt and being used, they're on this rack. And the reason that I have these little red snapper pieces on here is just a visual to keep me from putting these things too close together. Because I'm telling you, they are deadly when they snap closed. And I've had them snap closed twice on my fingers. So that's where they are. Now, I have talked to individuals that use the magnets, but they have a hard time getting them off of their stationary bars if they float. And if they don't float and they use them, then they still have trouble getting them off of the stationary bars. I use my finger. I just put my finger. There's a little gap under it, and I just use my finger to lift them up and put them off. But they can be cumbersome. So in that case, and I just did this one end, you can put these little door knobs, these drawer knobs on them, and then you have something that you can lift with. And they do work, especially if there's not a lot underneath. They do work, because this is hard to lift up, but this is much easier. So you can put 2 knobs on there, and that works too. And the same thing, when they're not being used, they hang on the... That's a flying insect swatter. Yeah. Electric. I've had wasps down here. It is a basement. So that's my Ketchup for the bobbin winder, and a little history in regards to how I learned from my grandfather and my father and the Marine Corps about overcoming obstacles. Sometimes, though, my patience doesn't remember the lessons taught. I did talk about the fact that I use only 3 rows when I long arm, and that the middle row is the working row. If I had the space to do 2 rows, the bottom row would be the second working row. And the top row is a reference row. And what I mean by that is, in regards to, there's only one mark that I trust to be correct, and that's my start mark. I keep that start mark in relationship to the quilt and the distance from the quilt exact. I always check this measurement, and I always check the distance between the 2 marks to make sure that that is correct. Then I will go up here and I will check this I'll put it right there at the bottom of that particular row, and that's where it is. It could be a little bit off because, again, the laser dot is not precise, and if you are a hand-guided individual that uses Pantovision or Pantos, you are not a computer. You are not going to be able to follow that dot over the center of that line all the time. You can go a little too far, you can stop right on it, you can be to the top of it, you can be to the bottom of it, and it's going to make a variance. There's going to be a little bit of difference. So that's what I use the reference row for. I just pick a couple. I don't just do one. I will never ever just do one reference point. That's not going to happen because this thing, in my case, moves, and I want to correct that movement by making sure that I keep it adjusted. So I will check a couple. I'll check some at the beginning, and then I'll come down here towards the end, and I'll find one down here, and I'll check it, see what it looks like. And it's just am I on it? No. It's just a little off, but it's not off enough to where it's a visual impairment. It's not off enough to where it's a visual impairment. Now, I've gone all the way across this, and I'm coming back, and I know this pattern's moved. If it hasn't, I'm going to be shocked, but I'm going to put it right back to where it was when I started this. And it hasn't moved much, but it has moved because I was dead center on that when I started, and now I'm off. So I have to put it back on my dot, set it, and then grab and drop again. And now it's back to where it was when I started. This is where I'll start the next row. And let's see. Oh, my spreadsheet. I do not save the patterns in the tablet. Don't do it. Once I'm done with a pattern, I save 3 patterns that are called in progress. In progress 2, in progress 3. That's what's in the file. Come on. I save these 3. These 2 patterns are, this is a Christmas doodle pattern. I keep it because it is a reverse. One row goes one way, and then it's reversed and it goes the other way. So it's not, all of the trees in that pattern aren't leaning in the same direction. And then this is an alphabet soup, which is a kid's quilt pattern, and it's the same thing. One row is alphabet and the other row are numerals. And they meld together. So I save those 2 because I use them frequently. But I keep in progress 2, and in progress 3. And you can see that I change it by date. So today, if I finish this quilt today, I'll save it. It's 2. And it'll be on this date. When I go to save the next one, I just choose the oldest date and save it as that and overwrite it. The reason I don't worry about saving all these patterns is because I save all the information in regards to the pattern in a spreadsheet. The date that I received the quilt, the date that I finished the quilt, the name of the individual quilter, and in this particular case, the one that's on the rack right now is Not Forgotten Quilts of Valor. That is our registered group with the National Foundation, and it was quilted by Teddy Z. We only use first name and last name to go on a label of a Quilts of Valor, so I have pretty much got in the habit of just using last name, first name. When you see a last name, usually it is the first time I've quilted for that person. Then I put the pattern in. Then I put those 3 rows that are on that screen right now from top to bottom are 25 inches. And each individual row is a 10-inch pattern. I put in Omni thread color, the width of the quilt, the length of the quilt, and the total square inches. And everything would be tabulated off of the total square inches, and in regards to batting, it's 20 cents an inch. So in regards to a Quilt of Valor, it's nothing, because we are reimbursed for materials by the foundation because we have an account. So that's how I keep track of the quilts. And it's more than once. And I started this spreadsheet in 2019. Prior to that, I had a different one. More than once. I'd say probably a half a dozen times a year, at least. I get a call that I want to send you a quilt, and I want you to use the same pattern and everything that you did on the last one I sent you. Oh, okay. That's why I keep it, so that I know. And I keep the dates because I can look at a quilt and I take a picture of every quilt that I have ever done, and I have a file. And so if I got the date that I finished the quilt, that's the date that I took the picture. So I can go back into my phone and go into my camera gallery and find that date and find that quilt to take the picture of it, to see exactly what I did. And it's just a reference. So that's why I do it that way. So here we go. Once again, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for following us or viewing us or whatever you do. We appreciate it. I'm going to try and do regular catch-up on pretty much a regular basis. It could be on a Wednesday. It could be on a Sunday. It's a day to catch up with maybe something that I've done that the way I do it could help somebody or show you a different way it can be done, like with wavy borders or I don't know, waviness in the back, something. I'll just show you what I do to correct those kinds of problems. So until next time, from Studio One, I say thank you very much and have a fabulous day, and quilt till you will. We do.